there's tremendous opportunity to make it intelligent, to be able to understand what the objective of the user is, and then to just show and highlight the most important things for the user as they're navigating. So that to me is like a future state of where mapping will go.
Welcome to the LandTrust Podcast, where land, technology, and the outdoors meet. Whether you're a landowner, an outdoor enthusiast, or someone curious about the future of recreation on private land, you're in the right place. Each episode, we share real stories from the LandTrust community, from unforgettable guest experiences to conversations with landowners about their land and why they choose to share it, plus interviews with leaders, shaping how we all experience the outdoors. And now, here's your host, Nic De Castro.
Today's guest is Matt Habiger, the new CEO of BaseMap, one of the leading digital platforms for hunters who want best-in-class mapping and planning tools. Before stepping into this role, Matt built and ran HuntScore, a data-driven hunt planning tool that was acquired by BaseMap in 2024. He's also got a serious tech resume, having led data science and AI teams for over a decade before diving into outdoor tech. We're going to dig into how that background shapes his vision for the future of hunt planning, mapping, and the broader outdoor ecosystem. This episode is part of our Outsides Insiders series, where we sit down with the founders, operators, and insiders shaping the future of the outdoor industry. Just a quick note, opinions shared by our guests are their own and not necessarily representative of their companies or of LandTrust. All right, Matt, well, pumped to have you on. I think it'd be good to get a little backstory on kind of where'd you come from? What was your career before you started HuntScore and then, found your way here to BaseMap?
Yeah, sounds good, man. Thanks for having me. I like these conversations. They're, I don't know. It's the type of stuff that it wasn't out in the ecosystem before I joined. Like you didn't get a lot of kind of insider conversations before I got into the hunting industry. So it's cool, because I know there's folks out there every day thinking like, oh, I've got a real passion for hunting or fishing or, whatever kind of your extracurricular activities are outside of work and, your family. And folks are always trying to do that jump, and they're like, one of the things that inspires them is hearing how other people got into it. So
totally.
Yeah. I, like you said, my background is on the data science and AI side. Just my quick background on hunting and how I got interested in the space. I grew up in Minnesota, rural Minnesota. And anybody who I think grows up in like Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, these like rural hunting states. If you grow up in a rural area, like hunting is just part of the culture and fishing, right? Or especially in Minnesota. And so like hunting and fishing was just something everybody in my family did since the time I was, like 3 years old. And
right.
I still got a picture. I wish I had it. It's like me holding up a squirrel. My brother's got a 22, and my other brother, I don't know, he's holding something, but I'm like 3 years old, over at my grandfather's. And so I have always hunted, even though I really went down like the tech route hard. So it's kind of funny because I feel like maybe there's more people on tech now that are interested in the outdoor, like hunting and fishing. There's always like a hiking segment, but the deeper I got into my career, like the fewer people I knew that hunted. So I talked to a lot of my friends in the data science space, and they're like, "Oh, you hunt? Like, what's that like?"
Totally.
Oh, well, like I go and I kill animals and I butcher them and I eat them.
I butcher them and eat them. Yeah.
Yeah. But so I was, heavily involved in kind of data science and AI as it really kind of got started in industry, almost 15 years ago now.
Formerly known as machine learning in many cases.
Yeah, well, it started off as statistics. In fact, when I graduated out of grad school and was looking for jobs, I initially went and taught for a year out in rural Kansas at Fort Hays State University. Go Tigers!
My wife went to Fort Hays State.
Did she really?
Yeah, she had a nursing program there.
Small world, man.
Yeah, totally. She
Yeah.
would not have
So
been in your statistics course, but
no, yeah, probably not. Probably not. So yeah, I taught out there for a year, and then man, it was like 2009 or 2010. It was terrible time to find a job.
yeah.
We were coming out of the '08 recession, and I got started as a statistical analyst at a bank in Kansas City, and that is what we were called basically for like 4 or 5 years, and then suddenly data scientist became a term.
It's a much
And
sexier sounding term. You got to be honest.
yeah,
You're like,
it is. And I remember having an argument with my manager at the time, who has gone on to be CFO at a couple different companies. And he was like, no, Matt, you don't understand. This is great because you're going to get a pay raise and I'm going to get a pay raise. And this is really good for us. It's like, but nothing's
totally.
changed. I'm still doing the same stuff. Um, so anyways, you know, data science then kind of became machine learning and now it's AI, but we're still using a lot of the same tool sets. And then, adding in new tools that come along and new methodologies. But anyways, I was doing that, had been, actually working in kind of a startup inside of Sprint at the time. This was like 5 years ago, 6 years ago when I first started doing some Western hunting. And at that time, I started getting like exposed to all of the draw systems out west, which are totally different than, hunting in the East and in the Midwest, where for the most part, if you're a resident or non-resident, you can just, pick up tags over the counter. But
Yep.
I was doing that, and we, started kind of a little startup inside of Sprint, and that ended up getting sold off to an ad tech company out in India called Mobi. And from the business, I know there's probably a little bit of business folks who listen to this. So from the business side, it was very much like entrepreneurship, and so we had another company that we formed inside of Mobi that wasn't really ad tech focused. It was around trying to figure out how do you take large streams of data from telecommunications companies and turn those into basically other, second order data sets that you can derive value from, that you can, sell, that preserves privacy for the individual users, but provides insights for businesses. And so we were doing that and getting a ton of traction, for the business nerds. Like in 18 months, we went from like 2 million to 7 million in ARR. We were just like a rocket ship. And about that same time, this was like 2020, I think, or 2021 now. After I'd done a couple Western hunts, I was like, man, these draw systems are kind of complicated when you're new to them. And it would be cool just to make it really simple and easy for people to figure out draw systems. And I'd used the site called HuntScore to plan my first hunt in Colorado at the time. And I reached out to the, founder who had created the site and was like, hey, would you be interested in selling the site to me? Because I just thought I could, with my data background, like I could go across the West, get all the other states integrated into the site, and, create like a really robust hunt planning system. And he was like, yeah, go, I'm ready to move on and do my next thing. And so I took that over in it's either 2020 or 2021. And it was like fate was kind of, I had two paths that I saw one of them, but I didn't see the other one coming. So
Yeah.
At the, like, I took the site over in like June, and then in July, our primary data source basically got shut off for the startup we were doing, and it just kind of killed the company.
That's called platform dependency. It's funny. I worked in advertising technology too, ad tech, and that's my career for about a decade before starting LandTrust. And you saw so many companies go and like build on Facebook's API or Google, and I built stuff on top of YouTube, and an algorithm changes or a policy changes, and it's like, oh, well, you're done.
Yeah.
And there's no
Yeah.
recourse. It doesn't matter. So yeah, it can happen overnight.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's crazy, and we had stuff in place that wasn't ever supposed to happen, but it did. It was like if it was going to be a B school, business case, you would say, at the end of the day, it had mostly to do with the fact that we were just such a small chunk of revenue compared to the, bigger entity that was controlling the revenue, that it was like, yeah, you guys are growing really fast. This looks amazing, but you just don't understand. You're nothing.
You're a quarter of a percentage point. Yeah.
Exactly. You're like a speck in dust. So anyways, yeah. That happened, and I could have stayed with the Moby. Those guys were fantastic. Like I
remember them. Yeah.
Yeah, they really taught me a lot. I've just never seen people hustle like they have and figure out how to solve like business challenges, and just adapt overnight. But I had, just started going on HuntScore, and I thought, man, I feel like I learned a lot of great lessons on how to operate a business and innovate, and learn how to, take a shot at this whole entrepreneurship stuff. And I had a little cash in the bank, and I said, I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to, once we kind of wind down the company, I'm going to jump into HuntScore full time and see if I can grow it and turn it into something big. And so I did that, and yeah, the rest is a struggle in history.
What do you mean? Founding a company is awesome, and it's really easy, and you make a lot of money. It's like, it's great.
I know. Yeah. It's fantastic. Yeah. It's funny in retrospect, like what ultimately, I got into it, and I thought I could play the SEO game, and like the company would grow organically, and all I needed was, enough runway and time, and I could bootstrap it myself. I didn't need a bunch of advertising dollars or big partnerships or anything like that. And that was true. I could grow it a little bit without that stuff, but I couldn't get any significant growth. So
yeah, there's a lot of people, like I said, this series, this Outsides Insider series on our podcast, I wanted to do, a lot of my friends are founders and CEOs and operators of other kind of digital outdoor companies. And you kind of alluded to it earlier. There's a lot of people out there that love to hunt or love to fish. It's like their passion, right? We work in a passion vertical.
100%.
You worked at Sprint, and Sprint is telecommunications. Like, I don't know, it's anyone's passion per se. It's like, it's infrastructure or whatever. But when you look at these spaces like hunting or fishing or skiing or whatever, you get a lot of people who love the thing, who might be really talented at it. It's like their true passion in life. And they'd be like, oh, wouldn't it be so cool to work in this? Or I have this idea for this. And I don't think they ever, I guess no one really understands what it's like until you get into it and start something. But I don't know about you. Like, I don't really hunt very much. Not because I don't love it. I really do love hunting, but I've got little kids, and I run this business, and my job is to facilitate thousands and tens of thousands of other people hunting and having great experiences. But I went like twice this last year. I got to go on an alligator hunt in September, and I went for 2 days, Alabama's opening of deer season. That was it.
Yeah.
It was like, I think 4 days total. And that's okay. It's, again, I wish I could do more, but I got 3 little daughters from 5.5 to 2, and this company, and, it's just life. So all this is to say is, for people who think it's just like anyone like Matt or myself or other people who work in the industry and all they do is hunt or fish or whatever, it's most likely not true unless you're in front of the camera. Like, if you're a personality and influencer, like, they get to do a lot of that stuff. Now, that comes with its own bag of cats that you got to deal with, and, the income from that, and just navigating social and all that stuff. So I'm not envious of that position, but those guys actually do get to go on a lot of hunts. Yeah.
No, 100%, man. 100%. I'm in your boat too. I've got a 3-year-old and a 10-month-old. And so I used to hunt more. I used to, when I first got into it, we didn't have any kids. So I probably went 30 or 40 days, that first year that I, went all in on hunt score. I did a couple trips out. I think I did Wyoming and, Colorado that year. No, 2 trips to Wyoming that year, for pronghorn
Just the
and elk.
luxurious life, man. Pre-kids.
Oh, yeah, it was awesome.
Multiple
awesome.
Wyoming trips in the same season. Wow.
And then last year, we were working on the house, which you can kind of see an unfinished trimmed outdoor behind me. But between like the house and the kids, I did no Western hunts, which is the first time in 6 or 7 years. And then I think I got out 3 days for deer hunting here in Arkansas. But like it just, the demands of running a company, and then when you tack on family, it's kind of funny because like the hunt planning component and planning a hunting trip and mapping was important to me before, but to some degrees, it's almost more important to me now.
Yes.
Having that different perspective where I'm like, man, time is just so much more
You don't
precious.
have time to dick around. Yeah. I mean, honestly, as you were saying that, I was going to say this, I consider ourselves to be in the digital outdoor ecosystem. We're very hunt centric, both you and myself. Yep. Although, people use BaseMap for other things other than hunting, and people use LandTrust to go fishing and do other stuff too. But hunting is definitely a tent pole. And I would say that the digital outdoor ecosystem, digital companies like BaseMap, like LandTrust, and others are even more important today for people in your shoes and my shoes, people with families and demanding jobs and just less time. Like when I go on podcasts and talk about it all the time, like I'm deeply envious of like the dirtbag 22-year-old dude who's like living out of the back of his Tacoma, 40 days a year scouting, 50 days a year hunting, like amazing time of life. Like soak it up, drink it in. It truly is a special time of life, but like that's just not reality. And you can afford to mess things up and fly a little bit more by the seat of your pants when you're in that stage of your life, which is a great stage.
Yeah.
Our stage of life, like, man, there's the margin for error. And when I say error, I mean like not killing a big buck. I'm just talking about like getting out and having an enjoyable time outdoors and relaxing. Exactly. There is way smaller margin for error. I don't get, that many days outdoors. So when I do, I really want to make them and treat them preciously. And so tools like BaseMap, tools like LandTrust just help you maximize your time in the field. And again, it's not about like I kill a 200-inch buck. That might happen. But it's, for me at this stage, it's just having a stress-free time outdoors. That's really what I go outdoors for now. Like if I get to kill something awesome, but it's like about camp and just disconnecting and relaxing. And that's why I think the digital outdoor ecosystem is so important for people who are just don't have as much time to go outside, need to maximize it.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. That's like being able to start to bring kind of more information into one centralized spot as opposed to having to go dig all over the place for it. That's like one of the big tenets that I see, a charter for BaseMap really is having, like right now, if I want to go research information on, let's say, spring berries coming up, right? I've been unsuccessful a couple times going spring berry hunting. I would love to be able to go spring berry hunting this year. Maybe I might be able to squeeze it in. I might not. I don't know. But if in the past, if I was going to do that, like I would go on to some forum sites and I would start reading like what comments are in the hunting, a particular state I'm looking at or an area, and like what are some tips or tactics. And I might go read a couple articles on that. And then I go to my maps
and hours of research.
Yeah, you're just all over the place.
Yeah.
And that, like bringing all of that into the one digital platform, is kind of like that's the holy grail,
Yeah. So I'm curious. And again, this podcast isn't about hunting stories. There's a lot of those podcasts out there. And I was talking to the
Oh yeah,
podcast producer, and he's thought we were, he's not a hunter. He thought we wanted to go that direction. Like, there's plenty of
that is.
hunting story podcasts. I'm not a particularly good hunter. Like, I love it, but I don't have anything really to give you on that side of things.
Yeah,
I want to talk about the business of the industry. And, so I have some pretty contrarian perspectives about the business, but I think it's a huge market. But let's talk about mapping specifically, since you're now, you've now stepped into this role.
yeah.
What do you like? Where do you think mapping? Let's just talk hunting. Let's just caveat this as, let's say, hunting maps. Obviously, Onyx is the kind of 800-pound gorilla in the room. But like, where do you think mapping is heading over the next, I don't know, 4 to 5 years from a hunt perspective?
There's the layer component of mapping, right? Which is everybody uses, one of the digital mapping tools out there. Obviously, I hope that you use BaseMap, but we all have layers of private and public land boundaries, layers of unit boundaries, layers of slope and terrain, and there's layers for everything. Layers. A lot of those layers, I would say right now, are I don't want to say they're dumb, but like, it's turn a layer on, turn a layer off. Like, if I'm going out to hunt something, it's kind of up to me to know and understand what is the best layer or sets of layers to use to achieve, the objective that I'm doing. And that objective changes as you're hunting, right? So like, during one part of my hunt, I could be navigating from point A to point B. And I'm like set on navigating. And so I care about things like, what's the fastest path? How am I going to make sure I'm avoiding blow down? How do I make sure I don't bump game as I'm navigating from point A to point B? I think in that whole layer experience, there's tremendous opportunity to make it intelligent.
Yeah.
And to be able to understand what the objective of the user is, and then to just show and highlight the most important things for the user as they're navigating. So that to me is like a future state of where mapping will go. And that doesn't, that could be hunt related. It could be hike related. It could be off-road, like
right.
Whatever you're using digital mapping for. There's a tremendous amount of information and data contained in those layers, but they're all sort of siloed today.
Well, and they're analog, so to speak, meaning you have to find them, toggle them on and off, and like do all this stuff when you're holding this device in your hand that knows your geolocation, that has accelerometers and gyroscopes in it. Like, it has everything, right? So it's like, why is this thing just not dictating? Okay, it should just know what I'm doing, and toggle things on and off accordingly.
So like that's one facet of where I think mapping can go. So I'll call it intelligent layers, right? And that could also go for things like, like I think the other thing in this space that we don't do a good job of, and none of the mapping companies do a good job of today, is, most of us like focus on a market segment. It's like, I got a tool set for whitetail hunters. I got a tool set for Western hunters. But like, my dad, for instance, he has almost zero need for mapping tool. Now I could think of use cases where he would be like, wow, man, I want to buy your product. Not just because you're my son, but because it provides a lot of use for me, and that could be things like sending him like alerts and updates about how changes throughout the year are going to impact his hunting season, or could impact his property, or not just his property. Because, he, like, when I was growing up, we had 60 acres. He's lotted it off and sold it off. We're down to 14. And so when you're hunting those smaller parcels, it's not as much about your property as the surrounding properties, right?
Yep.
Again, like satellite imagery is updating. You could say, hey, this person cleared, they burned. That's going to impact your behavior and where they're moving to. So there's just a lot of opportunity to not just impact the way that we do layers, but kind of consolidate information from different sources that impact wildlife behavior, and update and
Yeah.
alert a user like, hey, there are changes happening to the environment that will impact your time in the field and your
Yeah.
success in the field. So that
There's
type of stuff is also, I think, in the works.
there's a couple things in there. You mentioned like your dad. Does your dad still live in Minnesota? Or you say you're
Yep.
Minnesota. That's right. Yeah. So
Yep.
there's a couple things here. Mapping hunt maps of what we know today, right? Onyx
Yep.
Maps and BaseMap, Western companies.
Mhm.
Founders are Montana, not very far from each other either. Like Eric was from Missoula, and then Jeff is in
Just-
Idaho somewhere, right?
Idaho, yeah, up in the Panhandle,
Yeah,
Sandpoint.
So relatively very close. These companies, and BaseMap was an early company too. So you have this very Western mindset with maps, which is there's all this public land, and I just need to know where I can go.
Right.
And that's great. It's awesome, and it's an incredible tool. But I think what was really interesting building in Montana, I started my company in Bozeman, and I'm a private lands company. So other than Missoula, Montana, probably the least friendly place to build a private lands company that deals with hunting. But, Bozeman has this megaphone, obviously, with Onyx and Meat Eater and, other companies that are based there, Stone Glacier. And, it's a really interesting kind of like community for the hunt Sitkas there. So they have this really big megaphone, and they represent this like particularly Western style of hunting, which is great. It's awesome. I love it. Who doesn't like archery elk hunting? But I think they fell into this trap that like that's how people hunt. And
Right.
what they don't realize is by the numbers, like Pennsylvania has more licensed hunters than Montana has citizens, generally speaking. So when you look at like hunters nationwide, 9 out of 10 hunt private land. And so like guys like your dad or millions of hunters like him who live in states with very little public land who either own or lease property. It's not like, I wonder what this property looks like. No, dude, I know what the property looks like. I've been hunting it my whole life, or we own it or whatever. Like I could tell you where they bed down, like everything. So it's not about, I need maps for what does this property look like. When you're hunting millions of acres of public land, it's very important. And so I do think it's a really interesting stage for mapping generally is to understand who's the private land hunter. Because I can speak to Onyx very specifically. They have like built their entire brand. And I have friends who work there. I've had friends who've worked there for a long time. I was a vendor of theirs in 2015, helping them do YouTube acquisition, like been around the company a long time. They built their whole identity on public lands. Great. And they did a great job, and they went capture that market. But there's only so much of that market. And again, 8.5, 9 out of 10 hunters are hunting private land. Maybe not exclusively. They might go out to public too. And like, it's not all either or. And I'm not saying one is better than the other, but just realistically. And so I think you're on the right path of like, okay, why would someone like your dad ever get a mapping app? And that's the use case I think that needs to be solved, because your dad's not like, hashtag public land and, on social media and trying to find, it's just like, dude, I'm just going to go hunt whitetails on my property that's 15 acres. Like I know my property like the back of my hand.
Yeah. Yeah. And, he's doing things like, he's got, some trail cameras out. And so I think there's like, that's where I see a lot of innovation in the future that could be very interesting around connected devices. And not just like, a trail cam integration into maps. Because I think that's where you're going to have to start to realize, there's like, you run into business challenges. Not every trail camera company is going to want to integrate into a mapping company. Both of them are very interested in the subscription revenue from the individual users, right? And so like, well, why do I want people not using my platform? Or why do I want people to just have to pay a fee on the trail camera side to, then access it in the mapping side? So I think there's a big opportunity when we think about, the private land sector of hunting, and like, how do you capture that from not just the mapping side, but more like a this ecosystem perspective and provide the best ecosystem and set of tools for people who are focused on just managing and enjoying like this plot of land that they hunt or a lease that they buy. So that I think has a lot of opportunity. Like, and you see it. BaseMap was one of the first to integrate like Bluetooth connections with rangefinders, and I think there could be a ton of connected devices between trail cameras, weather stations, your GPS mapping, and not just one-way connectivity where everything goes into the mapping app, but where you could also push stuff back into the like your binoculars. Imagine you could pull up your binoculars and see like different waypoints marked and stuff like that. Or if you're out west and you want to see where those boundaries are, if you could push map layers into the binoculars so you could see that stuff. I just think there's a lot of opportunity going forward to do innovation like that.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. It just can't be private and public boundaries. I mean, that's how it started, and it grew, it grew based on, I mean, it's still a use case today that most people who subscribe for maps for hunting, let's just call it, are doing it for private public land boundaries. That's the lion's share from everything I've seen and heard. And that's been a good, 15 years, I don't know, of hunting maps. So I do think that you're on the right path. And, from that ecosystem perspective, these are conversations that, we're having and I have with other buddies who are running, kind of digital companies. Most people are familiar with in the hunt space, like players like Vista or, GSM or Pradco. These are, either publicly traded companies or they're holdcos essentially. So
sure.
They've got a strategy that they're going to go and buy up a bunch of fishing gear manufacturers or lures or rods or, hunting, et cetera. So they'd say, look, we're going to figure out manufacturing and distribution and the retail and then back office. And we're going to just like grow this thing. And it's a similar customer base, et cetera.
Yep.
In the digital space, I do think, to your point, some of the examples you just gave was like hardware and software. And I think that those make sense. I think when you kind of map out the ecosystem, no pun intended, you're looking at trips. So LandTrust is a trips engine. We facilitate do-it-yourself trips all over the country. We actually are today listing our first international one, which is in Mexico. So if you want to do a DIY Goulds turkey hunt, you will be able to book that maybe later today. So, so DIY trips. And that's why I founded the company. But then you have guided trips too. So trips, whether you're talking about hunting or just general outdoor rec. So if you look at just general outdoor rec with hiking, biking, fishing, camping, all that stuff, trips is the heart of where all the spend is. It makes sense. You buy gear, you buy subscriptions to maps, you do all this stuff to go on trips, to go outside. And so out of about $1 trillion every year in the US, about 700 billion of it is spent on trips and travel. But then you've got gear, e-commerce, subscription kind of apps like Maps and BaseMap. And so I think you've got companies like Mountain Tough, my buddy Dustin, and you live in Arkansas. I'm not saying you specifically, but if you live in Arkansas and you finally drew your tag and you get to go out to Montana to mule deer hunt or Colorado, like it's going to be a little bit different. And, being physically fit and kind of mentally strong is important. And so you can subscribe to, Mountain Tough's physical fitness and, basically get yourself there. So there's a bunch of these kind of ancillary digital services that aren't, physical goods like a bow or, broadheader, et cetera, that I think become stronger as you stitch these things together. And really, I think the opportunity in the space is to tie these services together in a way where we understand the customer, the hunter, or fisherman, but we'll stay with hunting, so that we understand all your preferences. And the cool thing about hunters and fishermen is we are always seeking new experiences. And so while you might have your place down the street that or your family's property that you get to go hunt turkeys and whitetail on and you love it and you want to hunt there all the time, I've never met a hunter or fisherman who says, I'm not interested in going somewhere new and trying some new thing, you know? So that's the really cool thing. No, it doesn't exist, right? So,
Yeah.
I just moved from Montana down to Alabama, and I'm like, I've never been on a hog hunt. I want to go on a hog hunt. And people are here why do you want to go hunt hogs?
Right.
You know?
Right.
So,
yeah.
so it's just like,
I'm with you.
Yeah. It's always, and it's a really, from a business perspective, it's great. We have people who spend passionately, so it's not a commodity, or it's not like lodging.
Yeah.
Lodging is like, man, I just want to find the cheapest hotel that's close to this thing. I don't really care. Or Airbnb,
Right.
I'll go use anything.
Right.
Obviously, we as hunters do not think of that mindset. Sitka has made an entire business out of selling you very expensive gear. And I'm not saying it's bad or anything like that, but we spend money because it's our passion. And so it's not a commodity mindset. So I do think that understanding that customer and having a unified customer profile and looking at like saying, okay, I know Matt. Matt lives in Arkansas. He likes to hunt, regularly whitetail and turkeys and ducks. But he also likes to get out west. And, you start to understand, does he archery hunt? Does he rifle hunt? Does he ever get out to do upland? Does he like to fish?
Right.
And you start tracking these things, and not in a creepy way, just like, hey, you're going and doing these things, but being able to then touch you with the right services at the right times. Like, okay, you're opening a map and you're going and looking in Wyoming at this antelope district, okay,
Exactly.
well, why?
Right.
So
right.
I can make an assumption that maybe you're interested in antelope hunting in that district in Wyoming. And so, what's the research there? Hey, is there, you're going to look at private and public land. Is there any private opportunities that I can do? Here's all the public land. Do you have the gear? So there's all these things that you can start to stitch together that are just so much more powerful than the point solutions on their own. Like you were saying in the beginning of like having 17 tabs open and a spreadsheet and like all this stuff. Like,
exactly.
I think the opportunity is there.
Maybe this is us coming from a digital background, and especially in the ad tech ecosystem, which, was like one of the most early innovators on trying to think about solving this problem of consumer intent and understanding where, how do you reach the consumer with the right product when they're actually ready to buy? I think there's an awesome opportunity here for that by building that ecosystem, like you're saying, right? You start to stitch the pieces together and you can understand the entire kind of journey and interest of where somebody is when they're planning to hunt or thinking about potentially doing a hunt.
Just daydreaming, right? Like when we go and do, a lot of this is daydreaming. Someone just, I was talking to another buddy who's running a guiding technology platform, and he's going to Isla Mirada to go fishing. I'm like, way to rub it in, dude. He's a little bit older than us. He's in his 50s. But that got me daydreaming like, man, now I live in coastal Alabama. I could drive down to Isla Mirada in like 9 hours. And so you just like, it's a daydreaming thing. And like, maybe I start to go and scroll through trips that are down there, whatever. And like, it's everything starts with a daydream, really, like a spark of inspiration. And from there to experience, there's so much in between. And there's a lot of different services and point solutions there.
Yeah. And some of the reasons why the daydream never becomes reality is because of information gap. Like my whole interest in Western hunting, like it started, as soon as I saw, like my dad, I used it today. So quick fun story. So, I have what looks like a Weatherby 300 Magnum, but it's not. It's actually like Inner Arms. If you ever watched that, like the God of War, or Lord of War, or something.
Oh yeah,
that. Yeah. Anyways, it's like loosely based on this Inner Arms company that used to do a lot of import and export of arms. Right? They're like Czechoslovakian or something. And anyways, so that's what the gun is actually. It's the Inner Arms Action. It's not really a Weatherby, but it looks like it. So my dad was, when we were really young, he's always like, "Oh, I'd take this thing out elk hunting out west if I could only figure out how to do it." And like, little did he know, he just never did the research, right? Or it was never like nobody ever laid out how easy it was, especially back then in the, 90s. You could have just went and gotten over the counter tag anywhere.
In Montana, wherever you could have done whatever
Yeah.
you wanted, man. You probably could have killed 2 bulls, whatever.
Yeah.
Like it was
And
so
like,
much easier.
yeah. And there was public land galore, but he just never was like, didn't know how. And now
He wasn't using the internet. It wasn't an internet search like, elk
exactly.
hunting in Montana or whatever. So it's just massive information gap, this like pedestal thing that he could never achieve.
Exactly. And it still exists today. It's so much easier, right? Like we've got YouTube videos out there. Our competitors have YouTube's videos out there. There's the state agencies are getting better about explaining it. But, between like, if you can start to wrap all of this stuff into a service, and especially I think now with the power of where we're seeing like generative AI and LLMs going, and kind of these vector search database engines, like I could very easily see BaseMap building and may have something like this in the works, but a search engine of such where you just say, how do I hunt elk, get started hunting elk in Colorado? And you're returning results that are not only, base map oriented, but also, let's say, if somebody has a video or a course that they've put together where, all of that audio and video can be transcribed to text and searchable, and we could take you right to the section of the video where they're, telling you how to do this. And so suddenly, and obviously you get a, AI overview of like, here are the steps, but then hopefully everybody is diving deeper into the links because LLMs aren't perfect, but
That's right.
Like you can very quickly see how you can take this interest, right, or this daydream and be like, oh shit, I never knew it was that easy to actually go hog hunt, or that I could do it that cheaply. Yeah, this is achievable. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, it was one of the next thing I was going to talk about or ask you about, which is uses of AI in hunting. And I think what you just talked about, we're working on a flavor of that as well, right? So LandTrust is a marketplace for booking outdoor adventures in a do-it-yourself manner. So you can just like Airbnb, but for hunting, fishing, camping, etc. Right? So, with AI right now, it's a search-oriented thing. Everything is search, right? And that's been the kind of modality for the last since Google, where you have like this intent, elk hunting in Montana, and you talk like that, elk hunting in Montana. That's a search, right? So it's like you wouldn't talk like this. You wouldn't say, Nick, what do you want to do? Elk hunting in Montana. You'd think I'm a little slow or something. Like, man, I'd love to go. I've got 3 buddies. We all live in Alabama. We're not residents, but we really want to go on an elk hunt. We want to find a place where we can do archery in the month of September, and that has lodging. That's how you would kind of talk about it, right? And so, as we've all, and hopefully our listeners are using things like ChatGPT and Claude and large language models, LLMs, but it's conversational. It's not like elk hunt Montana unit 304. That's very kind of like almost sounds caveman when you say it out loud, but that's how search engines have worked. And so I think as we can develop, and we are developing, conversational search, so to speak, chat, it's going to make trip planning, like you said, just so much more natural, and ideally matching you with the perfect LandTrust property. And we're probably going to feed other stuff in there as well, just to make it kind of well-rounded. But that's where we want to go, where, we can kind of get you matched really quickly, because right now you go and search, and maybe you would search elk hunting in Montana, and you see we have, hundreds of different opportunities, or 100 different opportunities there. And then you go through and you contact landowners, and, you ask the landowner the same thing, because it's like, hey, I'm bringing my daughter. Is this an okay hunt for my daughter? Is it too hard? Whatever, right? Stuff like that. We should be able to just eliminate and just show you like the 3 that are perfect for you taking your 12-year-old daughter on a rifle elk hunt for a cow, right? And that's got the lodging you want. Just ideally one, match you with the perfect one. So that's really, we look at everything as a matching problem because we're a marketplace, but really what we're talking about is matching. You have potential demand, your dad wanting to go on an elk hunt and just never knowing that he could, and matching him with like, oh, this is the opportunity that you could do.
Right. Yeah. I think that's kind of where it does sort of boil down to that problem, right? And there's like 100 of those touch points or those matching problems throughout the hunting process. And I think in each of those becomes an opportunity to like serve up or, provide information to the user about what they need to know. And, some of that is product centric and other stuff is just information.
Right.
Like how do you build the most useful platform for the user? And that's where I feel like, there's just a ton of opportunity and we're just, all the companies have just like scratched the surface.
Siloed and like point solution. And again, I saw this when I used to sell, enterprise SaaS in the ad tech and marketing tech space early on, is you had all these point solutions that were just like hyper focused on this one thing. But it's like, hey, as the marketer, you need to be able to stitch all these things together into a cohesive strategy. Like
exactly
going and buying 30 different point solutions and then trying to stitch them together. It's just too much. And so there's been a ton of consolidation in that space, to where it's like, hey, what are your goals? Oh, I want to drive conversions for my app downloads. Great, we got it. Like you don't need to go stitch together 30 point solutions. Like, okay, it's the same thing. What are your goals? I really want to go on an archery elk hunt with my daughter. Great, here you go. Here's everything you need to know. And this is what kind of like what booking agents used to do for hunt booking agent, but that was obviously for a guided or outfitted trip. It wasn't just generally, right? So like
exactly.
That's I think the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, like you could see it. You could dive down this whole course of questions like, hey, I want to go archery elk hunting with my daughter. Great. What time of year are you thinking? Oh, this time. Okay. And over here on the side, you can see like a map of the United States, and different areas are disappearing as you're answering those questions, and you're zooming in like suddenly, okay, now I've got a couple states where we can go archery elk hunting in September. And, what are the, like, are you and your daughter physically fit, or do you, need like,
right.
Yeah. And like, again, you can just start to walk through this whole thing of what type of gear do you have? Are you prepared? Would you need guided or unguided? Will you want to hunt public or private land? And there's just a ton of opportunity there. So,
and just get you down that funnel that might have, again, been a complete showstopper for someone like your dad. And it's funny, in the non-hunt world, my dad has always dreamed of going to Italy. And it's like this, I tease him now about it because he's 75 years old. I'm like, you could go to Italy for like $2,500. Like it's not this like unobtainium that you have built into your head, but it's just the knowledge. I don't know what it is, but I've seen it happen. And it's funny. It's always about trips for some reason, because you get these like pedestal trips that just you've built into your brain that I just could never quite do that. But it's like, no, you could easily go do this. Like here are all the steps. Like, and here's what it'll cost you. It's very simple, very obtainable. If you want to do it, there's no excuses now. So, I do think that is an opportunity that we're all starting to crack. I know we're working on it. You guys are working on it, and we're attacking it from slightly different perspectives. Obviously, we're different companies, but I do think that's where the digital kind of hunt ecosystem is probably going to go, or should go, at least my perspective. I know one of the things that you had an interest in talking about is like, are there opportunities for open source in the outdoors? And I guess for non-technical people listening to this, like what is open source? And maybe start there and then say like what you think there could be opportunities for in the outdoors or hunt space specifically.
Yeah. Open source, I think, is an interesting one, because in software, like open source is generally a piece of code, or it could be an entire program, but it's code that's been put out into the public domain that generally has, few restrictions on how it's used. It could be entirely open, like there's no attribution needed, there's no citation needed. It could be that you have to cite, or if you're going to modify it, that, you have to carry along the licenses you modify. And anyways, a lot of technology is built on open source. The fact that somebody wrote an algorithm one time and now 10,000 other software engineers don't have to rewrite the same damn thing allows for innovation way faster. And I think if you want to see innovation in this space happen really quickly, some of that same mentality would have to occur. So like connectivity between devices. If you want to see a really rich, ecosystem spur up around connected devices, you would need some sort of open source for connecting to binoculars, connecting to rangefinders, stuff like that, right? Same thing with some of the digital technology products. Like one of the easiest ways I could see a lot of innovation happen, let's say in hunt planning or mapping or almost anything, is like the state agencies are really all kind of enclosed ecosystems. So to access, anything about like how many preference points do you have or anything like that, you pretty much can't do it. It's probably against most of the terms of services. I haven't read through all of them in state websites, right? But there's really no way other than for me to submit a request to a state agency and ask for, the harvest statistics or draw statistics to get that data. Sometimes they post it in a format that's easy to digest. Sometimes it's really terrible. Even regulations, right? Regulations are like all over the board. They change within a state from year to year. These aren't like data centric organizations. And so coming up with like common data structures, common ways to access it, let's say through an API, that type of stuff could just be a total landscape shift for the entire outdoor industry. And that's not, that could be hunting, fishing, you name it. Like coming up with a standard way to report harvest statistics and report draw statistics and, stuff like that.
And regulations. Yeah, we're building a big database right now because again, for the listener who's maybe not as deep into this, why would you be as we are?
Right.
Dealing with 50 states. I mean, I guess not everyone's going to go hunt Rhode Island, but people do hunt Rhode Island. But you know what I'm saying? Yeah. 50 states are essentially 50 walled gardens. Like there's no commonality, like hunting regulations, season dates, harvest statistics, etc. Every single state's different. And sometimes states will change their own stuff from year to year. And then you go to like a state like Colorado, which is the most complex state in the nation. And they literally have like hieroglyphics in their, they use hieroglyphics in their regulations. There's like a bear paw, icon. And you're like, what am I supposed to do with this? How am I supposed to be able to process this and to be able to get regulations and like, again, because I can't tell that person who says, I want to go archery elk hunting with my daughter who lives in Alabama, where I live now, or Arkansas, where they can go hunt elk if I don't know what the regulations are. So do they have over-the-counter tags? Do you have to have preference point? All that stuff. So it's the key for me to be able to tell you what you can do legally. That's really one of the hardest parts about hunting specifically out of all the sports is, state regulation. And, you have, if we could sell unlimited over-the-counter elk tags in Montana, let's say, or Colorado, like, you could build a whole business just on that. There's an insane amount of demand to go elk hunting in the West.
Exactly.
But you can't. There's X amount of tickets, tickets meaning tags, to be able to go. And so, it's one of the things. Now, I do think that these present their own moats as you start to get them figured out. But yes, ideally, the states, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, however it would come down, again, it's government bureaucity, but hey guys, this is a new standard. Everyone's going to build on this standard to do their hunting and fishing regulations and all that. Like that would it would spur innovation so fast.
Yeah. And it doesn't even have to be the governments, right? Like most of this stuff in technology software development has been like some of the big industry players coming together and saying, look, we just got to, like, this is not the way for innovation to happen, right? And they come up with some standards and some guidelines, and then boom, there's a body, and they say this is, an organizing body, and this is the way that we're gonna format GeoJSON. This is the way we're gonna structure, a particular data set. So you could certainly see some of the larger industry players doing that and saying, hey, to facilitate innovation, we're going to start doing this. We're going to, adopt a standard, and then that will allow a bunch of, other companies to innovate and build on top of that. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity. I even think there's opportunity in the mapping space. I probably shouldn't even talk about this, but I got this thing. I'll just say it. Anyways, like the corner crossing stuff came out, right?
Yeah.
And so I actually, I open sourced back when it was, still just Hunt Score. I open sourced basically a notebook, some Python code that allows you to identify all corner locked pieces of land, right?
Yeah.
You could run it in any state. And then, I put in there, like, here's some other ways that this could be used. If the corner crossing becomes legal, or depending on exactly how the ruling shakes out, like, you could use this to then go and identify which corners would we have to identify the actual monuments or the markers to be able to cross that would unlock the most amount of land, right? And then you could figure out how do we actually go and identify those highest value corners. So I'm hoping later this summer that we'll roll something out at BaseMap where, users will be able to go out and identify those corners, take a picture, we'll get a reading of where the device is, and we can open source that data set. And other mapping companies could do the same thing. We could all contribute to it. And suddenly, you haven't just, like, theoretic, because, right now in those 6 states that are under that district that gave the ruling, like, it is legal to corner cross, but you have to know where the monument is. You got to be able to step directly over it, right? There are a lot of areas where there are going to be no monument on the corner of those sections. And then there's going to be some where there are. And right now, nobody knows where they are and where they are. And one of the easiest ways to do that would be, to take the millions of hunters who are going to be out there this fall and to aggregate that data and open source it. And you could do the same thing with, trails, U.S. Forest Service trails and parks. A lot of those data sets are severely outdated. And any user could tell you, I was on this trail. I looked at the trails that my mapping app had, and, like, it's off by, could be off by a couple of yards. It could be off by 20, 30, 40 yards in terms of where that trail shows from the government agency that provided the data and where it actually is. A lot of people are running tracks on there. If we could open, users could opt in to their tracks being aggregated in an open source data set, very quickly you could be like, guess what? U.S. Forest Service, trail, Gaps Gulch or something like that. This is the actual route of that trail.
Yeah, this is where the actual trail is. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's been 10 years or 20 years since they've updated the data set. And so there's a ton of opportunity, I think, for open source, solutions and innovation in the space.
Interesting. Well, that's the first time I've had the conversation, even within our community, about open source. I think it's a really interesting point. Certainly, there needs to be some standardization around the data sets that we work with every single day. Again, This isn't like fringe stuff. I can't tell you where our customer service, most of the customer service they answer, or, the questions they get asked is like, I want to hunt elk in Montana. Do you have a tag? Well, no. Do I need a tag? Yeah. Well, yes. So
Yeah.
there's so many people that want to get out and do things, but they have to legally be able to do them. And so, again, hunting specifically, it is this other layer of challenge that we have to have a key to understand these things. And unfortunately, every single state has their own keys, and they change, and they're in PDFs or they're wonky websites. And, it's just like this unbelievable thing that has kind of proliferated. So figuring that out and being able to standardize it will make, like you said, it will make innovation in the space a lot faster. And hey, look, there's probably some people out there that don't want innovation in the space. I think you have to stick your head in the sand and, scream into the wind. Like it's here. It's been here for a long time. There are implications of it, but, I think it's leaning into it and understanding it and being able to harness it the right way is what the future is.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like you said, it's nice to have a moat, and a technology moat is, always great. Like, I can process PDFs faster, extract it more accurately. Those things, as technology changes, then disappear.
They disappear.
So then, and then you're left with your walled gardens, which is what we see. We see it with Meta, we see it with Google, we see it with Apple, and the walled garden there is the users and the user data.
That's right.
And that is, basically what the walled garden becomes. And so, the I guess just access to data is not where I would like to see the walled garden be put up in the outdoor space. So
yeah, I mean, even as we started tackling building a what we call a GMU, game management unit, because by the way, every state calls them different: hunt district, game management unit, whatever, right? Yeah. Zones, hunt like area, it's just zones, even at that level, it's so silly. We just settled on GMU, but we started building a GMU database last year, and we started messing with ChatGPT last year, and it sucked at reading PDFs. It was like brutal, and now it's pretty darn good. So like even and week to week, it's changing, right? So if you're building your house on the fact that you grinded it out, you had a team in the Philippines going through and like adding into a spreadsheet, like that's going to disappear. It's pretty much almost disappeared now. So it's better to build your moat on your product and access to unique supply or things like that, or a technology advantage, or ideally your customer advantage. So you have your customers, you understand what their preferences are, the data, et cetera, on them. So like, I think that's the better place to build your moat, rather than we banged our head against the wall for years just aggregating hunt district data, because that's it's disappearing right now in front of our eyes. Like the pace of AI progress is like day to day.
Yeah, and mapping too, right? We see the same thing. Like it used to be much more difficult to stand up a mapping app. It's getting easier and easier. There's still, it's still very expensive to hire developers to develop natively in both languages and get the apps rolled out, all that. But like infrastructure and stuff, I think I feel pretty confident to say we're the smallest team in the industry.
Yeah.
And we do pretty damn well with a very small team. And I don't like,
which as an operator, I love, like, I appreciate it. Right. It's just, there's something, I don't know if you care to say how many people are on your team, but,
we're we got 4 of us full time, that basically,
which is amazing. Like to service the customer base that you guys and have the installs that you guys have. And again, BaseMap, how old is it now? I mean, Jeff was early. He was
20. 20. Was that 2018 or 19 when they officially launched? I think it was like the 2018 they released the beta. And then
he wasn't as early. I thought he had kind of rode the early wave like Onyx, but no, he's actually
he did his own bootstrap development in 2013. He started with prototyping and building, and not like he had an app in the App Store, and he had some users, but it wasn't like significant traction. He hadn't raised any capital, and then in 2018 they really got out there a revised app and into the market. And so that's when it
Yeah.
started to pop. But yeah.
But you look at that, and I remember the HuntWise guys, and I'm buddies with some of the guys over there. But I mean, they built a pretty good map. I mean, again, from a user experience perspective, you guys have a great map. It's one of the best maps. And the feature set,
Yeah.
it's just like, and you're 4 or 5 people, and you look at some of the other folks out there who have hundreds of people, and, we won't name specific names, but, and guys like Go Hunt, they stood up maps that were really good maps, and Spartan Forge, pretty small team. I remember talking to those guys when they were going to fundraise. And so the technology barriers, to our point here, are going away. So it's like, where do you find the competitive differentiation and, build your moat, so to speak, other than just like, hey, we've raised enough capital to go hire like hordes of engineers to go build these things, because that's just not necessary anymore. And you can build really great, stable, state-of-the-art applications like maps with small teams. And then it's like, okay, well, what's next? And I think, hopefully we've touched on and alluded to some of those things here, but it is a good point, and kind of bringing it home here. I think everyone should be checking out BaseMap. Go in. I know you're doing some, maybe tease out some of the stuff you're going to do around hunt planning, if you'd like to.
Yeah. So I mean, the hunt planner is released. I think the big thing that we're going to be looking at doing here, hopefully we'll get it out later this summer, maybe towards the end of summer, is kind of a more integrated kind of AI experience around that. So one of the things that we're really thinking about is, again, a lot of people, you can dive into it's easy to dive into the GMU and see the hunts and see how many points it takes or what your draw odds are. But a lot of people would probably just like to say, I'd like to hunt Colorado this year. What are my opportunities? And then be able to get a response back, right? And a recommendation on some units. Obviously we have all that data, and it's structured in a database format and good to return back in a structured way, but it's not that far away from being able to take that and allow people just to ask questions in a natural chat with it and get a result back, right? And so that I think is what we're going to be looking at rolling out, along with some stuff around kind of that content and being able to get answers back from a large forum that has asked a lot of these questions, and there's a lot of great answers.
Nice.
So we've got a partner
knowledge of the crowds.
That's going to allow us to integrate in some data too for those answers. So I'm looking forward to that.
That's killer, man. Hey, and maybe you'll see LandTrust listings in BaseMap as a layer. We'll see. We'll see.
We'll see. I think there's I put the probability very high. Very high.
Well, as I could tell you since day one of diving headfirst into LandTrust, I mean, for anyone who hunts is like, it would be so cool if I could see all of your properties in my mapping application. I'm like, that would be cool. We just did it with the fishing with On Water. We did it with the fishing app, so you can see all of LandTrust fishing properties in On Waters. But the hunt map integration has not happened yet. So we're hoping to change that very soon so that you can see all the opportunities. But anyways, we're teasing it all out here. I appreciate you coming on, sharing your story, your background. Hopefully a bunch of people, we're just getting this podcast up and running, but this specific series, Outsides Insiders, on the LandTrust podcast, is for people who are interested in, the industry and kind of the state of the art. It's not, this isn't a hunt podcast, so to speak. So, we'll share with a lot of our friends, and maybe it's a small group of listeners, but it's the people who are people like us and people who are interested in kind of the mechanics of the industry. So it's great to, have fraternity with other people who are in the fight, so to speak, building these businesses and kind of willing these things into existence and also charting the course for the next stage of this industry, which I think we talked a lot about here. So it's going to take people who understand technology, who lean into it, and who have the kind of guts and gumption to actually like dedicate themselves to doing it. Because it's not easy. I made a lot more money and had a lot easier job when I just sold advertising. Like I basically ate and drank with people for a living, and I got paid to do it. That was a really cool job. But this is a lot more fulfilling work, and it's good to be, like I said, have community with other people who are doing it, and I want to share kind of the conversations that we all have with each other, with other folks out there who care about this thing.
Yeah. No, I think this is great. I'm looking forward to listening to more of them as they come out.
Okay, so tell people, where do you want to send them to check you guys out, you or the company, and just any links or places you want them to go, and we'll link it in the show notes.
I mean, just if you got your Android or iOS device, go to your respective store, and search BaseMap to check out the app. Obviously, basemap.com too, if you want to check that out. And yeah, we're always looking for feedback and partnership ideas and stuff like that. I'm recently took over the CEO role, and Jeff, our founder, is very focused on product and kind of the next wave of innovation there. But if anybody listening to this and I'm like, love to partner with that guy, I've got ideas on how to take BaseMap to the next level, I'm open. Just hit me up at matt.habiger@basemap.com.
Habiger.
You got it.
Really want to say thanks to Matt for a great conversation. Again, it's always fun to talk to a technologist who had a bunch of experience before coming into the hunt space. I'm excited to see Matt lead BaseMap into the next era of the business, and appreciate his partnership. On that note, we're announcing here first that we are now rolling out our first ever partnership with a hunting map provider to see all of LandTrust properties in their maps. So any LandTrust property that has hunting available on it, you will now be able to see in BaseMap's mapping app, which is awesome. So I've actually switched over from Onyx to BaseMap. I'm loving the actual functionality of it. They've got a bunch of really cool features. And of course, now I'll be able to say, I can go look at a map of Alabama or Montana or wherever and see not only all the different public land options, but I'll also be able to see all of the LandTrust properties there. So it can make hunt planning a lot easier and kind of consolidate it in one place. And we're going to lean more into that partnership. We're excited to kind of announce it here. You'll see that rolling out into their app very soon, the next couple of days. I think we're going to do a little giveaway. I think they're going to give away a handful of premium memberships. We'll probably do a gift card or something. But looking forward to showing you guys all what that looks like. And what a great way to have like one mapping app to rule them all, so to say, where you can see all the public and private land opportunities for your next hunt. So keep an eye out there. Hey, by the way, if you're a landowner and you're interested in potentially listing on LandTrust, it's super easy and free to get started. You can go to landtrust.com/landowners. And we've got a bunch of video testimonials of other landowners who've been with us for years. We've got FAQs, all that fun stuff. There's a contact information there. You can text or call our team. And we're happy to get you started. We'll do all the heavy lifting. It'll be very easy. And if you're a sportsman and you still haven't created a free LandTrust profile, that's crazy. Take 15 seconds. Go and create your free LandTrust profile. Tell us what you're interested in, whether it's hunting or fishing, what species you are interested in, what state you live in, what states you're interested in. And we are like a free 365-day a year scouting tool for you. So we will send you new properties and packages that match your interests. So kind of like Zillow, if you've ever used an app like that where you tell them what kind of house you're looking for and they just constantly send you houses that match that. We're doing the same thing. You tell us what kind of outdoor experiences you're interested in. We send you a bunch of them and you can see what looks interesting to you. So take 15, 20 seconds, create a free account. Don't be crazy. Well, that's it for us this week. Thank you for joining, and like, comment, subscribe, all the fun stuff, and share this episode with friends if you found it interesting at all. Thanks.